So good morning. Ooh, okay. Good morning. I am Lisa English, and with me today is Alexandra McCann. Thank you for joining us this morning as we go over the ESSER Family GRA Drawdown Training. We will be discussing all three of the ESSER allocations, which include the CARES Act ESSER 1 funds or the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act funds, the CRSA Act ESSER 2 funds, or the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act fund, and the ARP ESSER 3 funds, or the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So as many of you already know, the first installment of the CRSA Act ESSER 2 flow-through funds are already available in the GRA, as well as the ESSER 2 state set-aside funds. The second installment of the ESSER 2 flow-through funds will be available on July 1. And the final allocation adjustments will be made in October or November of this year. The first installment of the ARP Act, ESSER 3 flow-through, and the ESSER 3 learning loss funds will be available on July 1. The second installment will be made available as soon as the Idaho ARP ESSER state plan is approved by the U.S. Department of Education. So the state board's next meeting is on the 16th, and this is when they will look at and approve the state plan. The plan will then be submitted on June 18th to the U.S. Department of Education. And then again, the final allocation adjustments for these funds will also be made in October or November of this year. So here's a couple of basic items to keep in mind when working with all of the ESSER funds. As always, activities must be used in response to the impact of COVID-19 on students. ESSER funds do not contain a supplement, not supplant requirement. ESSER funds are governed by the Uniform Grant Guidance and the Education Department General Administration Regulations, or EDGAR. All expenditures must be reasonable and necessary. And these are one-time funds for one-time resources. So just keep that in mind. Now, there are now 20 allowable use of fund activities for the 3 ESSER funds. Please note that all 20 of these uses now apply to ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3 funds. And this list supersedes and replaces all prior use of fund lists. So the first 11 are going to be familiar with everyone who's already using the ESSER funds. There are a couple of new additions to this list. For instance, number 16, which is addressing learning loss among students. And number 17, which is school facility repairs and improvements. Number 18, which is projects to improve the indoor air quality in school facilities. And number 19, developing strategies and implementing public health protocols. So just a couple of new ones there to keep in mind. Now, the ESSER drawdown performance periods. The CRSA ESSER 2 grant was awarded on January 5th, 2021. Because the grant award period begins on January 5th, the GRA will not allow the expenditure period to begin prior to January 5th. However, the grant does not allow for pre-award expenditures. Does allow for pre-award expenditures. I apologize. Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, your sound is just fine.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. We had a note saying that someone couldn't hear us. The GRA will not allow the expenditure period to begin prior to January 5th. However, the grant does allow for pre-award expenditures for March 13th, 2020. So if the LEA has a GRA request for an expenditure during the pre-award timeframe, please add a note in the notes section of the GRA referencing the date of the expenditure. The same will also be noted for the ARP ESSER 3 request, as the award for that grant was on March 24th, 2021, and the expenditure period will begin on March 24th, 2021, and the pre-award will begin, of course, March 13th, 2020. So as an example, we have what we should be seeing for the pre-award explanation in the GRA. So just down in the corner there, it says, this is for pre-award costs dating back to 7/1/2020. So just something like that in the notes section that lets us know that it is a pre-award and before the January 5th date. Also for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, if you are making a pre-award drawdown request, please make sure that the pre-award drawdown is separate from any January 5th and newer requests. So we keep the pre-awards and the current awards separated. Reporting requirements captured in the GRA are based on ESSER allocation reporting thresholds of less than $150,000 and greater than $150,000. Functionality will remain the same, except for some additional reporting requirements. For example, project names and FTEs retained for allocations greater than $150,000. And for those LEAs with an allocation greater than $150,000, we will have an example coming up here in a couple slides to show you that. So in the GRA, we're looking at here the SRSA ESSER 2 flow through and SRSA ESSER 2 set aside in the GRA. They should be there in where the rest of the GRA grants are. So to locate the ESSER 2 funding, then you will want to submit a request. So as normal, you click the add under the request tab. You complete the request form as you would with a traditional GRA request. Now for the additional reporting requirements for LEAs with an allocation over $150,000, this is what you'll see for additional reporting. You'll need the project name and description, which will be required for all requests. Job data required for reimbursement of salaries and benefits. Subcontract, subgrant data required for reimbursements on purchased services. And the total must equal the amount claimed under the purchase services expense category. So here's just an example of how to figure out how to calculate an FTE amount. So say the LEA hired a custodian to increase the frequency and level of cleaning on the school property. If the individual works 680 hours annually, you take the 680 hours and divide that by the normal, like 280 hours, and you'll get 0.327. And that's going to be their FTE based on the 2,800 or 2,080 work hours. Okay. Now, in the notes section, to expedite the review and approval by the SDE staff, try and reference to the appropriate category of the allowable uses of fund. And this reference can be added to the notes section. So for example, if you're wanting, $15,000 worth of hardware, software, connectivity, that kind of stuff, you'll want to put, number 13 is the number on the 20 allowable uses that it coincides with. This just kind of helps us take a look at the items and helps us know that the expenses are allowable, if you will. This also will be in addition to your normal notes on the description of what is being purchased with funds. And I'm okay at this point, even if you want to just add the numbers that they coincide to and not the full information that follows it. But if you add those points in there of what they coincide to, that would really be helpful when approving the GRA. So just a little reminder for required documentation. You'll want to retain documentation to support your GRA drawdown requests. Expenditures must be allowable under the ESSER funds, and stipends must be reported under the salaries and benefits category. And remember that those are going to be above and beyond. No, they're not going to be above and beyond. Okay. So for the ESSER, just stipends must be reported under the salaries and benefits category. Capital expenditures. Capital expenditures must be pre-approved. So in ESEA, federal programs, we aren't used to using funds for capital expenditures, but ESSER federal funds are different. Under ESSER, funds may be used for capital expenditures, which are defined as expenditures with a useful life of more than 1 year and a per unit cost, which equals or exceeds the lesser of the capitalization level established by the LEA for financial purposes, or $5,000. Examples might be to repair and improve school facilities to support student health needs, conduct maintenance and upgrade projects to improve indoor air quality, including heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, window and door repair and replacement, purchase district-wide curriculum, etc. All capital expenditures must meet the necessary and reasonable requirement and are subject to inventory procedures. The important thing to remember with capital expenditures is that they have to be pre-approved as required under the Uniform Grant Guidance. So on this link, or on this slide, there is a link for the JOT form to apply for that request. Capital expenditures must follow the rules for construction as identified in the Uniform Grant Guidance and in EDGAR. This means that the Davis-Bacon labor standard rules apply, which requires that prevailing wages for the locality as determined by the Department of Labor be paid. Prevailing wages is defined as contractors and subcontractors working on federally funded jobs are paid wages and benefits no less than what others locally pay their workers for similar wages, or for similar projects, excuse me. Inventory procedures must be in place as well as a disposition plan. So here are some good resources for the Davis-Bacon Act that we wanted to lay out for you. If you have any questions regarding the Davis-Bacon Act, we would suggest reaching out to the Department of Labor, which is actually the first link at the top of the page here. So that's an important one if you have any questions about that. Just remember for capital expenditures that once your JOT form is submitted, that you wait for an approval email to come from the SDE. So once you submit the capital expenditure form, it will come directly to us. It will then be reviewed. It will either be sent back for more information or for clarification, or it'll be approved. Once approved, the submitter will receive an email back letting them know that the project has been approved. Please make sure you attach a copy of the approved CEF you receive back from your GRA request. If you asked for funds from 2 different ESSER pots, both requests will need a copy of the approved form attached. So ESSER fund numbers and revenue codes. Alexandra and Julie are working together to set up fund numbers for each of the 3 ESSER grants. The revenue code is the same for all of the ESSER grants, which is 445900. But each ESSER grant has its own fund number. It is very important to know that each ESSER grant must be tracked separately. And that's why we will set up different fund numbers for the different grants. If you have already set up your system, you can keep that system as long as you can separately track these funds. However, we highly recommend using unique fund numbers to report the ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3 funds. Please use fund details to track separate funding streams within that ESSER grant. Using separate funds to report the different ESSER grant allows us to complete federal reporting requirements. So if you have any issues with the GRA system itself, please reach out to Katie Tronson or the GRA administrators at the above emails listed. If you're having any ESSER funding issues, please either reach out to myself or to Alexandra, and our contact information is listed there as well. We are working on revamping our federal programs page. We are going to merge the 3 separate ESSER tabs into one tab that will be labeled as Pandemic Relief Funds. Once you enter into that first tab, you'll be able to find the 3 separate funds and supporting documentation. So watch for that change coming to the website. The Office of Inspector General, the OIG, is the independent oversight arm of the U.S. Department of Education. The OIG helps ensure the pandemic relief funds are used as required and reach the intended recipients. To report allegations of fraud or other criminal activity, contact the please contact at the information provided. There's an email and a phone number if you need those. Okay, I think we were at the point for any questions. Michelle?
Okay, we do have some questions. The first one is, does the 150,000 threshold apply to the entire ESSER 2 amount or to each individual allocation of ESSER 2 funds?
That is for the total amount of ESSER 2 funds.
Okay, great. Next one is, if we are requesting an exemption from bidding, how do we go about doing that? And when can we anticipate receiving a response for our exemption request?
So this is Alexandra. We're currently working on a form. It will be similar to the capital expenditure exemption form, request form, excuse me. And it will be a jot form link that you'll complete. A few boxes to check, a couple of pointers, prompts on there, but it will be the same process where it will go through the jot form. It will be submitted to us, it will be approved, and then you would also attach that to your GRA request. So we're working on that. I'm reluctant to give you an ETA on that, but we're hoping to have it up and ready perhaps by the end of the week.
Sounds good. We had a request if you guys could go back to the slide that had the codes on it, the revenue codes. And
There
then
we go.
Let's see, next question. So because these funds are to be used to offset the PESF freeze, which allowable use number do you recommend to code those expenditures that would otherwise been cut?
So I'm a little unclear what this allowable use number is. It sounds like a school finance question. So we'll take that question and run it by Julie.
Alexandra, this is Karen. I can actually address that.
Sorry?
I said, this is Karen. I can actually address that question.
Oh, please do.
Thank you.
Okay. So Katie, you would use the other activities. I believe that's number 20. You would use that, you would reference that one in the notes section of the GRA and just reference budget shortfall.
Thank you, Karen. We misunderstood the question. We appreciate that.
No problem.
And then another request, can you guys go back to the page with the allowable uses?
Yes, yes.
All right, and another question is, if we are a non-title school, will there be a set aside for ESSER 3? And if so, when?
So to back up just a sec about the allowable use of funds list, we have a document like that on the website as well, and the SURSA uses of funds and the ARP uses of funds. And the presentation will also be posted on the website for further reference. So if you do not capture all the uses of funds at this point in time, whether that's a screenshot or taking a photo, this information is available on the website. Now about ESSER 3 non-title schools. At this point in time, I do not know what the plan is. I know we have Karen here with us. Maybe Karen has an update, but as it stands right now, we're going through the process of awarding ESSER 3 flow through split into the 80% discretionary and 20% learning loss. And then I believe the Board of Education may determine the uses for the ESSER set aside.
Thank you, Alexandra. This is Karen. And the only thing I would add is that, yes, the state board members determine how the state set aside reserve is going to be spent. 3% of that, 7% is prescripted by the U.S. Department of Ed, but 3% will be decided by the state board members. And it's my understanding that they support, all of them support funding the non-title schools or low title schools with these funds. They are meeting on June 16th. I'm not sure that this is an agenda item, but I do know that it will be addressed very soon.
Great, thank you. Another question is, have we been given the ESSER 3 grant allocation amounts yet?
So the allocation amounts are posted on the website in the ARP section. It's a table with numerous columns. It shows the first installment at 80% for the discretionary and then 20% for the learning loss, and also the second installment, the dollar amounts for the second installment for the two funding buckets. Just keep in mind, both with SURSA and ARP, these are preliminary allocations in that sense that we set aside amounts for the new and expanded charter schools, and the allocations will be reworked in the fall once we have more detailed numbers, enrollment numbers for the new and significantly expanded charter schools.
And Alexander, just a reminder to everyone who is on this webinar that those ARP funds will be available for drawdown July 1.
Thank you. Another question is, where would we enter the budget shortfall amount in the GRA? Example of salaries and benefits and supplies.
So you will need to draw it down as salaries and benefits. So for example, if you experienced a budget shortfall in salaries and benefits, let's say that's $50,000, you would still report that as a salaries and benefits drawdown. But then in the notes section, you can make a note that this is, you know, a drawdown to cover the budget shortfall. And I guess to Karen's explanation earlier, that would be number 20, allowable use of funds for, you know, the budget.
Other activities.
Other
and stuff, yeah.
activities. But we still need to see, even though you're spending, you're using these funds to cover the budget shortfall, we still need to see what you're drawing down, whether you're drawing them down as wages and benefits or supplies or materials, so on and so forth, purchase services.
Ladies, that is all the questions that we have so far.
Okay.
Just know that if you have any questions, you're welcome to get a hold of us. If you think of anything after we're all done, we are here to answer any questions that you have. I guess if that's it, then we'll say goodbye. Thanks everyone for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
attending.